Hello everyone, welcome to the VIX podcast, an amazing show where we discuss insights on how to simplify real estate investing, leadership, growth, finance and other awesome topics to educate and inspire people to see the brighter sides of every coin. Do well to like, follow and click that notification bell to get updated on new episodes. Don't go nowhere, grab your pen, turn up that volume and let's go. Hello great people, welcome to the VIX podcast, an amazing show where we discuss a whole lot about how to simplify your real estate investments. We discuss about leadership, growth, how to manage your finance and other awesome topics to educate and inspire people to see the brighter sides of every coin. And today, on the very first episode of the podcast, we'll be discussing about how to understand land titles and how it affects your real estate investments. Understanding land titles and how it affects your real estate investments. In recent times, you've been shaded with the idea that location is the greatest factor to check when you want to buy any property, either land or a house. And that is undoubtedly true. The location of your property has a relatively high percentage of how much return you can get on your investment. And I am also very big on checking for location before spending a dime on any property, either a land or a house. I am always very particular about checking for location. Because as a real estate agent like that I also recommend that you also should check the boxes of location and address it as one of your key factors which will help your investment to grow. Location is very, very key and very paramount, and we talk about it a lot. And what people are somewhat shying away from or paying low attention to in recent times that I've discovered is property titles, the titles of properties, and also the documents of the properties. These are two different entities. The property title and your land document they are two different entities, and people get to mix or twist all of these things. So in today's podcast, we'll be demystifying all of these things and then making it very simple for you to actually understand. Your land can be in a high-end or prime location, but the title on that land can strip you of its ownership. Now let me take that again. Your land can be in a high-end or prime location, but the title on that land can strip you of its ownership. Because, of course, it is a true fact. And you shouldn't be carried away with the sweetness and ambience of the location and pay detailed attention to the land title. You can get a land in a very, very awesome, prime and wonderful looking location, but the title of that land will actually deprive you of the ownership of that land when the time is due. So you wouldn't want a situation where you've already invested your money and then in the future you are getting to find out that the title on that land actually is limiting you from its full ownership. And in today's episode, we'll be discussing the different types of land titles and land documents. So I'll be breaking down and simplifying the difference between the land titles and then the land documents so that you can understand all of these things very well when you want to invest in real estate or when you want to buy your next property. Now beyond just looking forward to location and then some other stuff, it's very, very important that you understand your land titles. And I'd like to list some of the very important land titles that we have in Nigeria. Number one on today's podcast is the probate and letter of administration. Probate and letter of administration. Let me just list them out so that then as we go on, I will begin discussing more about them. We have the probate and letter of administration. We have the court judgment. We have excision and gazette. We have the governor's consent, and then the most glorified of them all is the certificate of occupancy, C of O. So it's very, very important that you understand, you know these titles. When you want to buy a land, when next you want to go get a land, it's important that you ask questions about the land title. And it's not just about hearing that a land has a probate and letter of administration or it has a C of O. it's also good that you understand what these land titles actually mean, so that it can help you facilitate the decision making process of your investment. And before we move any further, I'd like to bring to your awareness that there are two types of land acquisition. There are two types of land acquisition. Now, we have what we call the committed acquisition, and then we have what we call the global acquisition or the non-committed acquisition. These are the two various types of land acquisition that we have in Nigeria. So now let's take time to discuss about these things. What is a committed acquisition? What is a committed acquisition? Now, in order for you to understand this thing, let's say you have a land in a particular place, or committed acquisition is like lands that have been registered by the government and are slated for purposes like creation of roads, drainage systems, canals, airports, schools, hospitals, which other one again? Mention them. All those lands that have been assigned for functions, for government functions like building of road, drainage system, canals, airports, and all of that, those are committed acquisition. Those are committed acquisition. They are under government acquisition. So government actually owns those lands. It's very important that you understand what a committed acquisition is, and you should know a land that is under committed acquisition, so you don't ignorantly or deliberately possess properties from those places, and if you do so, your properties are subject to demolition, or you lose your property. So it's very, very important that you understand or you know when a property has a title called committed acquisition. Now, we have the second type of land acquisition, which is the global or non-committed acquisition. The global or non-committed acquisition. Now, what is global or non-committed acquisition? It's these lands like these are very, very safe to purchase, because these lands are lands that are there. Probably they are lands that have been occupied by the government. They are lands that have been acquired by the government long time ago, but they don't have any slated purpose for such lands. Non-committed lands or global acquisition are lands that have been acquired by the government, but they don't have anything they are doing with such lands, or there is no stated purpose for such lands. So lands of this nature can be turned to freehold through a process of ratification. So if you see any property and then they tell you the title on that property is global acquisition or non-committed acquisition, those lands are very safe to buy, because from a process called you can acquire such lands through a process of ratification. So it is important that you understand the global acquisition and the non-global acquisition type of land acquisition in Nigeria. Now that we've been able to discuss about this, now let's talk about the land titles in Nigeria. Earlier on we've mentioned about 5 land titles in Nigeria. And as we go on, I will explain to you the difference between land titles and land documents. I will explain to you the difference between land titles and land documents. So the very first land title in my list today is the probate and letter of administration. Why am I even starting with this? Because this is one of the most important of them all, or this is an important document in land acquisition. Now, what does this document actually do? In cases where the owner of a piece of property is no more, provided the person is dead or that kind of thing, the representatives of that person must first obtain this letter for them to have access to that land. So in case a particular person A, has a property, a land, and then along the line he dies or something happens, the representatives, whoever is representing the deceased, must acquire a probate or letter of administration from the court, I guess. So the person, yes, not even I guess, from the court. So the person has to get a letter, a legal document which is obtained via the registry of any state high court or federal or the Federal Capital Territory. So the person has to get these documents first of all before they can have access to that land. So that's one of the land titles we have in Nigeria, the probate and letter of administration. Now the next property title we have in Nigeria is the court judgment. Now, the court judgment is seen in cases where there is a dispute between different parties. Let's say party A and party B, they are in argument of a particular land, and then one party wins the case in court. Let's say party B wins over party A in court. The court has what we call the court judgment. They give a court judgment that states that party B has won the case over party A. Therefore, party B can now proceed to getting the appropriate documents for the land. So it is now giving autonomous rights to party B that has won over that land dispute in court the right to proceed to get his or her own document over that land. So it's always better to understand these titles very well before buying any property from anybody. They can tell you there are some lands that when you ask for the land title, they will tell you court judgment. So when they tell you court judgment, it's always good to tell them to provide that document so you can peruse that document, give it to your legal advisor to also go through that document so you can be sure of what you're doing. Now, the next property title we have on the list is the Excision and Gazette. Excision and Gazette. While these two property documents or property titles work hand in hand together, I'd like us to look at them individually, like separately. So the excision means that the government of a state is releasing or has released a parcel of land which was initially under the global acquisition to individuals or families interested in such lands. Now, when we were talking about the two types of land acquisition, we discussed about global acquisition or non-committed acquisition, and then we also talked about the committed acquisition. For the sake of reminder, I'd like to remind us that the global lands under global acquisition, these are lands that are in government's possession, but they have no stated use for such properties. Now, the committed acquisitions are those ones that the government has assigned a purpose for, that they like to use to do, they want to use to make roads or airports or build structures on it. So when acquiring a property and then they tell you that the title on that property is excision, it means that the state government or the government of that state is releasing or has released that parcel of land which was first under the government in global acquisition manner or in a state of global acquisition. They had no official purpose of that land. They are now issuing it back to individuals or families that are interested in such lands, so that they can now process a document called government approved excision. Government approved excision. So when they tell you a land is under excision, it means that the government initially had that land, but now they are giving it back to the community, either to individuals or to families that are interested in that land, so that those persons can go and process a government approved excisions. Now, government lands lands that have titles of excision can actually be processed up to the governor's consent level. So it's better to understand this. Now, the Gazette is referred to an official book of the government which clearly states all the lands of the state. It clearly states all the lands of a state that has been excised and given back to the community. The Gazette is a legal document, a record book of the government that states all the lands in that state, that it outlines all the lands in that state that has been given back to the community. So this document actually carries information like the community, the details of the exact expanse of land that was given back to the community. And usually when you get a property with Gazette, you can now apply for a C of O. or a governor's consent which grants you exclusive right of ownership of that land for a period of 99 years according to the Land Use Act of 1978. So it is only the gazette or excision that gives you the access to start processing your C of O or your governor's consent, which grants you exclusive right to ownership of that land for a period of 99 years. And this is actually stated according to the Land Use Act of 1978. So having been able to discuss about, we've been able to talk about 3 land titles, and I'd like to proceed by going forward to discuss about the next title document that you should know, land title rather, that you should know, which is the governor's consent. This is more or less like the second highest glorified land title in Nigeria. In the simplest form ever, in the simplest term ever, the governor's consent is simply a document that shows that the governor of any state is aware that a land or a property has been transferred from person A to person B. So it's just like you are seeking the consent of the governor. That's just the governor's consent. This title can be the governor's consent title can be obtained as many times as possible. So if the person has if let's say seller A has sold that property, a piece of land, to person B, and then person B, after processing his documents and all of that, is now wants to resell to person C. The buyer can also go and process a governor's consent. So it just shows that that particular piece of land has transferred ownership from one person to another person. So it doesn't matter if it occurs like 200 or 300 times, so long it goes on accordingly. And the governor's consent is more or less like that security that you get. It's like that seal of security you get that, okay, this property, yes, has truly been transferred from me to this other person. Now, the next land title we have here is the certificate of occupancy. Certificate of occupancy. Now, this is the C of O is the highest form of land title in Nigeria. Although when you take a particular glance at the look of the gazette properties with excision and gazette have more power over that of the C of O. Now, this is the reason. The C of O has a restriction of ownership for 99 years, but properties under gazette does not have that restriction. Properties under gazette does not have that restriction. So, but in Nigeria, everybody is always focused on having properties with C of O. Now, what is a C of O? Because C of O is considered as the highest and the most glorified land title in Nigeria, it is issued just once to the person who first buys a piece of virgin land. So when somebody has bought a particular land and has processed a C of O under that land, if you are reselling it to the next person, you are not to process a C of O. What you should get is like a document of transfer of ownership, either a deed of assignment, and then you get the governor's consent for the governor to consent to the fact that it has transferred from the original person who owns the land that actually processed a C of O, and now it has been transferred to you. So the C of O, it means that even if the name of person A is still in the C of O, your deed of assignment or the governor's consent will actually cover the fact that you have now transferred ownership from this person to the next person. The C of O is an authorized document given by the state government to an individual. It could be a group of individuals or an entity like a real estate company, to confer full ownership of land or a piece of property for a duration of 99 years, after which you can now renew that particular property. And most properties in Nigeria are very expensive in some locations due to the cost in the process of securing lands with C of O. I haven't been able to discuss about the various land titles that we have in Nigeria. I'd like for us to now discuss about land documents. I'd now like for us to discuss about land documents. So, what are land documents? At this point, yeah, I'd like us to believe that land documents are different from land titles because it is the title of a particular land that tells you the state or the condition of that land. Now, land documents are documents you need when you are buying a land in Nigeria. There are times you don't even need all those excision and all of those things, but you need to understand the nature of that land, the title of the land. So you need to know all of those things. And now we'll be discussing about the documents needed to buy land. The number one document you need when you're buying land is your purchase receipt. And in this receipt, it is usually issued by the seller to the buyer. So the purchase receipt, the receipt actually carries the signature of the buyer, and your names must be written very clearly. And usually these receipts are issued by the seller, like I mentioned earlier on. The second one is the contract of sale. And a contract of sale is a legal document that carries detailed information of the transaction that occurred. So it shows the description of the actual sales payment which was made and will be made. So if you are buying a property, let's say, and you are paying in installments, the contract of sale is that document that they issue to you initially that, okay, yes, this person indicated interest to buy this property and has made a commission of so amount, and in let's say so number of days or so number of months, the person is coming back to make complete payment and all of that. So your contract of sale is also an important document you get in the process of buying a land. The next one you want to know is your survey plan. Your survey plan is a document that shows the exact land size. It shows the map of your land. You understand? It is an important document, and you should place this of utmost priority in the process of buying a landed property, because there are some lands that don't even exist, and then they give you fake documents for that land and all of that. But your survey plan is going to tell you if that land really exists or not. So your survey plan is that document that shows you the exact map and the location of your property. The last one on the list is very, very important, and this is your deed of assignment. Your deed of assignment is a document that clearly states the transfer of ownership from the seller of a piece of land to the buyer. It states that upon completion of the payment, the seller has no right whatsoever on that piece of property. This is the document. Your deed of assignment is that one that tells you that, okay, Mr. Adekunle has transferred ownership of that land to Mr. John, and Mr. Adekunle has nothing in affiliation with that land whatsoever again. And now that Mr. John is the new owner of that land. So in most cases, when you want to process your C of O, you go to the land registry with your deed of assignment to show that the property has really transferred from. When you want to process your governor's consent, rather. So that's what I was actually trying to say. When you want to process your governor's consent, you go there with your deed of assignment, because your deed of assignment now shows that the property has transferred from person A to person B, and then the governor is now consenting to the fact that, okay, it has really transferred from this person to the next person. So I haven't been able to discuss about these things. I'm sure you've been able to understand the differences between land documents and then land titles. And in summary, I'd like to say that land documents are your deed of assignment, your survey plan, your receipt, your contract of sale, and the rest, which you need at the point of buying a property. It is the titles on the land that explains if the land is under governance or acquisition or not. So a property can actually carry a deed of assignment, it can carry a C of O, it can carry, a land can actually carry a C of O, but if it is under government acquisition, that is a land that you'd want to run away from. But if it is a global acquisition or a a non-committed land, you'd want to actually go for such type of lands. Those are lands that government has given back to the community and has said, okay, you can now take and process your own documents. And the initial persons that actually gets lands like that, they are the person that processes the C of O, then resell to you so you can start processing your deed of assignment, your survey plan, and all of that. It's actually a good thing to have you on the podcast today, and I'm sure you've learned a lot from this podcast. If you found this podcast very meaningful, please like and share this podcast. You can follow me on all social media handles at Abel Victor Timipamo-owei. It's good to have you on the podcast, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the VIX podcast. If you find this podcast very useful and educating, do well to like, follow, and turn on the notification bell to get updated on new episodes. Follow me on all social media platforms at Abel Victor Timipamo-owei. For more information, you can click the link on the show notes. See you on the next one. Bye.